Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? We're going to look at the latest projections of a Planet X flyby. And this is some of the most compelling evidence yet. We're going to look at multiple slides. We're going to look at science meeting scripture. That's what's fascinating about this. Multiple levels. Really excited to have Gill back on the program again. Gill has been a researcher for years in the Planet X phenomenon. He has kind of coined it Planet 7X, which I find fascinating. And we're just going to look at the latest numbers as well, possibility of the Planet 9 that they call it being a dark star. They recently said, oh, it could be a basketball-sized black hole. But then an article comes out the next day that says, black holes aren't really what you think they are anyway. So much disinformation out there. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Gill. Good to see you. How are you?
You're welcome, Rex. It's a pleasure to be back on your show again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I also wanted to say you've got some of the best slides out there and these projections. And I really like the detail you put into why you have these orbits and the dates, etc. I mean, you put a lot of thought into this, and it's not just something you say, oh, I'm projecting it because I have a feeling or because I saw an image of a lens flare. Actually, I don't even think we've seen it yet.
No, there's no valid sightings in the public realm at this moment. Remember, there's 2 to 3 million amateur astronomers globally that the government doesn't really control. So if anyone would actually have an actual sighting besides a sundog, lens flare, or atmospheric anomalies, which are common, they would be more than glad to point their telescope and be the first, second, third, fourth, even the 10th to capture it. You would see multiple pictures. They would show the coordinates, which most people, when they show a picture, they don't show coordinates. They have no clue where it is in the sky, and so on and so on. There is nothing valid in the public realm now. Father Malachi Martin, they had pictures with the Vatican, and NASA had pictures, but there's nothing in the public realm at the moment. It has to come closer for us to be able to see that.
Yeah. And I think that actually overall, most people that I know personally, that I knew 3 or 4 years ago, that looked at those images and thought for sure it was Planet X or Nibiru, they're now like, okay, I get it. It's a lens flare. I understand how that works. And I understand if it was that close, the world wouldn't be anything close to what it is. And I also, just real quick, I wanted to thank my friends over at patriotsolarbank.com. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wanted to pick up one of these really cool devices, it's about the size of your phone, and it uses a solar panel on the front to power the battery in the back. And then you can plug in your phone. You can plug in 2 devices to it. Go to patriotsolarbank.com. Use the code LEAKPROJECT15. Get an additional 15% off. So that's a total of 65% off. Never have to worry about batteries again. Just use the sun. And I said that as fast as I could. That was a quick shameless plug. They come in handy if you need them. Can we start with Gill, the 2021 projection that you think could very well be a possibility? And can I share that slide to move into that?
Sure. Let me share my screen, and I'll bring it up here.
Great. Fantastic.
All right. This is a drawing made from the software model.
Okay.
When we reverse engineer the data we have at hand of using the orbit that was established in 1054 AD by the Asian astronomers, the Chinese, Korean, and the Japanese. Remember, each emperor had maybe, let's say, around 20 astronomers. They were the best in the country, and then they worked for the emperor. So you had about 60 astronomers here that put their name to this at the time in 1054. So I was able to read their data, and I was able to project this path, and this follows Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Now, we know it's orbital path. The Bible gives us the hour. It says mid of night, okay? And that's a night that is 12 hours longer than a normal night, because Earth's rotation is slowing down because Earth is entering into the plasma tail. And the month is going to be around Passover. It's going to be, the crossing will happen 3.5 days after Passover. Now, what year it is, that's what's in question. The Bible does not give us, as clear as mid of night. It doesn't give us a year. There is the point about Jacob's trouble. If you go read the story of Jacob, which is 20 years before he left his father-in-law. Well, from 2001, which I'm saying is the beginning of Jacob's trouble, and even the rabbis said that. From 2001, you add 20 years, you got 2021. So this model right here is using the end of March of 2021. And if we back it up, I have right here shown at the beginning of each month the position on where it would be following Kepler's laws of planetary motion. You can see how the gap widens as it gets closer to the sun because it's picking up speed, because the closer it gets to the sun, the more force is used to pull it and the faster it goes. And then like it slingshots around the sun on its way out. So once it reached what's called perihelion, which is basically the backside of the sun of its orbit, you have 40 days before it arrives and crosses Earth orbit right here in March over here. That's the same thing as Jonah's warning in the Bible, where he warned Nineveh that on what they saw, he just pointed to the sky and he says, your doom comes in 40 days. Well, it's quite interesting that when we use software, it shows us a 40-day orbital period between perihelion and the time it crosses Earth's orbit. There's too many things that are exact in the Bible. The sequence of events, the 3 hours of darkness, you name it, there's multiple points that the neural model that the physicists gave us using electrically ruled universe works out. The model works out where a gravity model doesn't. So the physicists are more correct on how the universe is working than the astronomers are at the moment. So right here is where it should have been around October 1st, if it's going to arrive March 30th/31st of 2021. So we're keeping an eye on this. And when it gets to the dash line area, this dash area right here is where we expect the sighting to happen. October 1st would be the beginning of Sukkot, which if you understand the Hebrew text and what they're telling us, and if you're following Yahovah's appointed times that he gave us, you're supposed to be in Jerusalem by October 1st. And you should see this months before that, which would qualify the year that you need to be in Jerusalem. And you stay in Jerusalem from October all the way to March. Because the Bible even tells us what half of the earth is going to be hit. It's the side of the earth that has 1/3 of the continental crust on it. It says 1/3 the grass, trees, and later it says rivers. Well, they just describe continental crust, but yet they don't have a word for continental crust, but they described it. So what half of the globe is 1/3 of the continental crust? That's North and South America. And so we have some interesting parallels that follow science in multiple points that they shouldn't have known. You know, if they didn't have Kepler's laws of planetary motion, how did they know it was 40 days after it crosses the back of the sun? How did they know that, you know, that it would arrive mid of night in the future? There's a bunch of points here throughout time. Remember, the book of Revelation was written during the time of Yeshua. And this object, this planet passed 5 other times between that, but he didn't mention nothing about it. It says, not until Israel is formed in one day, that generation shall not die out before all is fulfilled. Well, to be accountable as a witness, you have to be 12 years old. Well, if a person was 12 years old, 1948, they would be around 85 years old when this planet shows up, if it's 2021. Because it was 2016 and 2021 when the moon was at the foot of Virgo. And if there's another one, I'm not able to find it till another 93 years later. It might be there because the Hebrew calendar is a moving calendar. It's the sighting of the moon and everything. So it's not like using the Gregorian calendar. But right now, I'm not able to find another time period that this is going to be at the foot of Virgo, the moon, that is. So we have some interesting lineups.
I wanted to share something with you real quick because you brought up the electric universe, and you also brought up that there's been multiple flybys in the past. But I just want to show you this real quick, and I want to, because it ties into what you're saying, and I think it also confirms a lot of what we're talking about. So what you see here is a glyph that shows what looks like a bunch of stick figures, right? And you'll see it looks like a family of 5 at the very bottom. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. That's not really letting me zoom in much. There's a family of 5 on the bottom, and then above you see a bunch of stick figures. Now, what else is interesting is above these stick figures, this is the squatting man that we think, that not only I think, but also Diamond and many other people that research the electric universe think that the ancestors, our ancestors, the natives, saw in the sky when this planet was doing this flyby. It looked like a squatting man, like these giant plasma discharges and events that were going on in the heavens. Well, they were writing a calendar of what was going on from either left to right or right to left. But above this family of 5, these looks like the Perrot instability plasma events that have been also confirmed in or duplicated at a micro level in experiments that they've done. But if you look above this, you'll see 2 very large circles, right? And we're like, okay, is that a comet? No, we think that this is actually the planet. This is a planetary flyby. And if you look at it, it also has a little bit of a point to it. And it's showing it down here. And then it's showing it moved a little bit up here. And then if you look further to the left, I wish I could show you better with this image, but further to the left, if you see that squiggly red line, that looks like a lightning bolt that was going. And then below it, to the bottom right, you're going to see what looks like a ladder, some type of ladder. And unfortunately, this image, I didn't get what was to the right of that, but what to the right of that was what looked like a sun, but it was down here. The sun was down here. So it's as if they were showing us a calendar of events as they were seeing this flyby. And we think that this is about 2,700 years old, approximately. I want to get your take on that. And then
well, that would put it around
about 2,700.
That would put it around Hezekiah's time.
Okay. And is that connected? Does that kind of link up with some of the timelines that you're showing? Because we think this was Venus. We think that this was possibly Venus when it did a flyby.
Well, the only problem is I can't make much of any type of comment on it because there's not enough data for me to use it as far as astronomy goes. I need a star pattern. I need either multiple planets shown, I need some sort of background information to tell me the time and the date. It's very hard to date a rock. It's next to impossible. So for them to be able to guess that 2,700, kind of curious how they did it, unless there was artifacts that was buried by it, near it.
I can answer that. So the 2,700 year timeline that we came up with approximately is, if you go back and look at the Sumerian cuneiform tablets that are about 2,700 years old, they were showing they were talking about these very bizarre reddish clouds in the sky. And there is a connection to, and then they did some samples. They tested some tree rings, some scientists, and they were looking at the data in radioactive isotopes. And it showed that there was some major solar storms going on about 2,700 years ago. And then we were also looking at the red. It's a big factor in these tablets and the color of the red in the clouds. And we were thinking today, this is where we came up with the 2,700 year timeline. And this isn't solved. This is just putting our heads together, and also the reddish color. There was a reason the natives were writing it in red. They're putting it in red. And I don't think it was just because that was the only color available. I mean, they were clearly using the red as a timestamp. So, or as something that they saw in the heavens. So they're writing it down on the rocks. I mean, it wasn't just them playing flutes and having buttons of cactus, in my opinion. So that's an approximate timeline.
Like I said, I can't really comment because there's not really enough information there. We have.
I respect that. Absolutely.
We have.
That's good. I would prefer you say that.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have 14 events from Yeshua's sacrifice to Noah, and possibly another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 after the flood. And we have another 5 events in between Yeshua and to now, from now. So from right here to here, from where we're talking about. So we have quite a few events. A lot of these are similar as far as the viewing, only about 3 to 4 times, possibly as much as 6 from one particular record, but I can only prove about 3 times that Earth is tilted, possibly 4. But the rest of the time, it didn't get close enough to cause us to tilt. It doesn't always pass close to Earth. That's when it's the most severe. It's when it really passes close to us. The Bible says this next event, and that's a bold statement, it says is the worst event in all of Earth's history. Noah's flood is not the worst event. This next event is. So kind of think the severity of that we're talking about. So you can see here, or are you able to see what I'm showing here?
No, I when I change the screen, I'll need you to go ahead and reshare that screen.
This is roughly if you read Revelation using some astronomy knowledge, CO6, which is right here, CO6 talks about fiery hail, that's the meteor shower, and there's some other details. CO7 is right here, where the fiery mountain, you can see it right here, this fiery mountain. You're going to have a bunch of other debris, but one of the pieces of debris is the size of a mountain, literally. And it hits Earth around the Pacific Ocean. That's wormwood. The actual planet is called the fiery dragon of old. They're 2 different things. And sometimes it's called in the Bible the fiery sword. Greeks and Romans would call it a fiery sword. Anyone in Israel and Asia would have called it a fiery dragon. That's what it is in the text still today. Whenever we read texts about it, and you see it throughout the culture, a fiery dragon. And N7. Now keep in mind the way the writers write on this occasion. They'll tell you the beginning. They'll tell you the end right here. Then they'll describe what happens in between the 2 points. And that's exactly the way the book of Revelation is written. First it says CO6, then CO7. Part of CO7 is describing the events that happen in between it. They say that they wish death for 150 days before death comes to them right here. This is the second event. 150 days in between these 2 is 5 months, which is also mentioned in Revelation. This is the same way of Noah's flood. Let's see if I have it over here. right here. Here's Noah's flood. Remember how it says in the end days it'd be like Noah's flood. The flood happened right here where there's other text that says 7 floodgates of heaven opened up, but that's not a normal rain. Okay, that's 7 meteors that punctured the upper canopy of water, and it flooded the earth, as well as water coming from underneath. For 150 days, which is the 5-month period right here, this is when Noah noticed a great wind coming over the waters, and then the water started to recede. Well, that was the impact you see right here. This is what caused the Gulf of Mexico, and that on the opposite side of Earth, that knocked off 71% of Earth crust. Okay, because the crust is only loosely held on by gravity. It's not glued on like you would think. It's not. That's why the continents shift. They're not glued. They're just sitting on there because of weight. And 71% of our crust is missing right now. That's the volume of our ocean, and that happens to be the exact volume of our moon. The moon was actually created during Noah's flood. About 300 years later, it was fully formed as a circular disk. And that shows up in the first stela right here. This stela, this is Nimrod, and you see 3 equally sized objects in the sky. One's the sun, one's the moon, and this is our planet right here. This one right here, and this is the first time, the oldest object that I'm able to find that represents the moon in there. And this is when the Tower of Babel was destroyed. And so the moon, according to a German scientist, it only takes 300 to 400 years for the moon to coalesce from debris. And the moon is made of large chunks. It's not made of fine material. Matter of fact, that's what I have photos from it. I can show you from NASA. This is a drawing from NASA that shows that the moon is made of big chunks, big, large pieces. Now, do you think these large pieces, the way they showed, were just moving around in space? Coming from a distant, some other universe? No. It had to be a short distance. And we know the moon came from the Earth, but they don't have a model that actually works, because it didn't happen when Earth was molten. It happened when Earth was fully formed. And this is the top crust. Another one I can show you that proves that is this one. All of this reddish, greenish is iron oxide. Well, the only way, you should have iron showing up, yes, but you shouldn't have iron oxide. Iron oxide is rust. The only way that rust can be formed is if you have an atmosphere and water. And the gravity of the moon is not large enough to hold an atmosphere. It's not strong enough. So how do you get water and an atmosphere to form iron oxide? Unless it was part of Earth at one time. So it's the evidence is there if we want it, but this is the Nebra sky disk, and we can date this to a date that gives us the exact day of the mid of the drought of Joseph of Egypt. And this was found in Germany. And the Germans at the time were not trying to make the Bible true, because there was only 12 Hebrews, okay, at the time of this, okay? So they didn't even know that the Hebrews even existed, or even if there was a tribe called Israel yet. So, but this proves, remember how Joseph had a dream at age 17, where the skies bowed to him, and he's 40 right here in Egypt. Well, I can prove to you the skies literally bowed to him, because from his point of view, the skies are bowing, but on the actual, Earth is tilting 26 to 28 degrees. When two magnets get close to each other, these two planets have the opposite poles attract each other, they tilt 26 to 28 degrees towards each other. And then as it's leaving, they straighten out again. And this is what the text is telling us. He had a dream before it happened, and it actually happened when he was in mid of the drought in Egypt. Then right after that, we have this one right here. That was Job's trouble. If you read Job's trouble, it has some interesting points. The first thing that it starts out with is that his shepherds and his flock were totally consumed. That means there was no bodies, no animals, none of the shepherds. They were vaporized because a meteor exploded in the air just above them. And then the pressure wave, you can read it later, that the pressure wave knocked down the building that his kids were staying in. They were getting ready to celebrate Passover, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, basically. And the wind was so strong, because it's like a hurricane wind, it collapsed the building and killed his kids. And that's the way the story even starts with Job. Go back and read it. Right here, it gives us the exact date. It shows all of the planets, even the ones that were below the horizon, because they knew the time frame, just like a clock, where the planets were. They knew their orbit. It shows the moon. It shows the sun. And what's very interesting, it shows Isis, or Horus, right here. That's our planet. This is what they called it. And this is what this stone right here is showing us, and it gives us the exact date. February 8th, 1352. You have to, let's see here. You have to subtract 10 years from this date in astronomy, because everything past Hezekiah was 360-day year. Not until Hezekiah did the calendar change to 365.25-day year. We have over like 30 different calendars globally that show that prior to Hezekiah's time, everybody was on a 360-day calendar. And it was not because they didn't know how to count, because there were ancient observatories. Let's see if I have a picture of it. I don't have a picture on this one. But they have ancient observatories where they knew how many days of the year it was. Now, just like you had shown me that ancient rock there, okay? If I had enough information like this, the constellations, and then something representing the planets right here, I can give you a date, especially if we know where it was made. So we know that this was made in Nineveh. It was found in the library of Sennacherib. This was Sennacherib's astronomer that's making this, and he was making the comments of Jonah. Jonah was there saying, in 40 days your doom comes. Well, the astronomer is documenting it. And if you zoom in right here, this is our planet right here. It's going to have a tail like a comet. And it's on the ecliptic. They have a line that goes right through the sun right here. And this gives you the exact date. You can go back in time and find it. This is it right here. February 17th, 687. Now, if you go, you see where it was at 40 days? It was right behind the sun. Earth is over here. Earth can see it. The people on Earth can see it right here. Now, when this thing moves 40 days, it'll be right here. Same thing with Earth. In 40 days, they're going to have a very close call. And that's how come you read about Hezekiah, where the shadow went backwards on steps. The two planets got so close to each other that the magnetic pull caused Earth to tilt 26 to 28 degrees. Let me let you ask some questions here. I don't want to be talking.
No, this is fascinating. Thank you so much, Gill. And I mean, I'm looking at the visuals with what you're describing, and it makes it a lot easier to understand. And I've seen the disc that's from Nineveh, that ancient astrological disc. I think there's a specific term for it, an astrolabe or something like that.
Well, they call it a planisphere, but it's not really a planisphere because they think that this was the North Star right here in the center, but it's not. Okay, you can look at it clearly. Okay, from a southern view, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7 constellations. Okay, on any given night. But right here, they didn't draw the constellation, they drew the planets because it was important right here. They drew these planets because with the planets, you can dictate the exact day and time. Remember, you see this constellation Leo and right here, Aquarius. In 2 hours, they're totally gone. This one would be under the underneath the horizon, and you'd have a brand new constellation here popping up. So this is within 2 hours of the event. All of these right here, this and this line, remember, I'm going to tell you something that not too many people know, the book of genealogy. The rabbis hid the book of genealogy around 2,000 years ago to where nobody could trace back Yeshua's lineage and different things, okay? Well, I happen to find the only copy left that has it correct. And the way that we know that it's correct, because it lines up with the astronomy dates. Remember, they didn't have software to tell a lie like that. You couldn't predict the date on when something and come up with this story. And that book is the Leningrad Codex in a museum in Leningrad, Russia. It's the only copy right now that I can tell you, because I've looked at different the patriarch ages from the Septuagint to the Orthodox Bible to the, you name it. I went through multiple. They have errors in them. That one didn't. And it has the science correct. Like in the English version, it says the sun went backwards on a sundial for Hezekiah. That's not scientifically correct. Okay. Right here. It says right here, the shadow went backwards on steps. Well, that is easy to calculate. See, a sundial gives you a tilt from, or the Earth had to stop on its axis because it's east to west. The shadow on a sundial is from east to west. Well, that's impossible for the Earth to come to a screeching halt, reverse 10, let's say it was 10 degrees, then come to a complete stop, and then speed up several times faster because there's no lost time mentioned in the Bible, and come back to the original time frame. All the oceans would have emptied out of the place and covered the land, much less all of the massive earthquakes you would have. But whenever you change the orientation, it says the sun went down on steps. Well, the sun is in the south, so you point the window of they usually use a window to illuminate the stairs because stairs are dangerous. The sun comes through and it moves 10 steps. 10 steps. Well, that gives you a tilt of the Earth of 26 to 28 degrees. Where did we hear that before? It was on the Niebuhr sky disk. Okay. And look at Hezekiah's seal that they found. It shows a disc with wings. The wings is not making this into a pagan god. What he's showing is the wings means that it was moving across the sky. It shows movement. And it was in the sky, it was moving. Now, what these 3 prongs at the bottom and 3 at the top might be lightning, it might be moons, because I've seen that in the Asian records as well. There's like 7 orbitals, but they're not planets. There may be moons, but this is not a mini universe like some people are losing their minds about. Because if it would pass one time, that would have been the end of Earth, okay? This has passed multiple times, and it's the size of the planet-sized comet-like object. And during Hezekiah's time is when Earth had that, we had a lightning, a plasma hit. I don't have it here. Let's see.
And while you're finding that, I wanted to bring up a question that is asked here in the chat.
Sure.
What event caused the Libyan glass gemstones?
That was the Libyan. Well, I do know there's one in Saudi Arabia, where the desert is parts of the desert. They get a lot of green glass. The same thing happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, which is at the same time of Lot. Right here, this right here. Okay, they found Sodom and Gomorrah, and what they found there was trinidite. You see this greenish item right here? That's sand turned to glass. And the only other place that trinidite is found is at a nuclear bomb site in Nevada, where it turned the sand into glass. Well, the only other object that we know of can do this is when a meteor explodes before it hits the ground. If it's an air burst that's close enough to the ground. Remember the one that came over Russia that recently exploded? They were very lucky that it didn't explode closer to the towns, because people would have been vaporized, just like the time of Lot and his wife. Remember in Nagasaki, when that atomic explosion happened, this is where a person was sitting. This is where people were standing on a bridge. This is where a person was standing by a stone wall with a ladder, and he was vaporized. All of these people were vaporized, and their shadows are still there today. Well, just think, if Lot's wife was vaporized because she didn't listen, she came back around after they were behind a protective area, and because she had 2 daughters left in town, because there was 2 towns that were exploded or destroyed, and she heard the first one, then she came out for the second one. The second one went off. She was vaporized. Now her shadow is left. Now, what does ancient man say? Remember, this is not the Father in heaven say, I'll turn it to stone. It's ancient man's description on what they're seeing next. They said she was turned to stone or salt. All this area has a lot of salt in the area. Okay, so that's what, if someone didn't have the word vaporization and didn't know that it was possible, and they see an exact shadow out of it, what would they think? Exactly what they're describing. You can see where they found, this is Sodom and Gomorrah, one of them, one of the towns right here. This is the top of the hill. And it's on the north side of the Dead Sea, on the Jordan side, on the Jordanian. They found body parts that were ripped off the bodies, like an explosion. The top of the joints were burned. The feet were burnt, the toes were burned, but their limbs were ripped off of their body from an explosion. Here's the side of the building where it's this orange is because of the high heat. It baked it to a different level, and there was a piece of that was turned to glass, but this is baked by high intense heat. And this is found. This is because there was a meteorite that exploded just above, because half the meteors explode before ever hitting the Earth. They will explode somewhere within their entry. The most dangerous ones is when they explode just above the ground. That's when people are vaporized. That's where it does the most damage. So Russia missed the bullet there. They were very, very lucky in that region. I hope that answers hope that answers the latest questions.
Well, it doesn't answer the latest. It does answer that question. We've got like at least a dozen questions here. I mean, we've got 1,067 people watching right now. And I've been looking at the chat as you've been talking, and people are just enthralled, man. People are really enjoying what you have to say. And folks, this is the way I look at things. I like to get as much information as possible so I can be prepared and not scared. It's always better to be prepared, not scared. So, and also I've got somebody bringing me some more coffee because I'm going to need it after this conversation, man. This is, oh my goodness. Somebody said in the chat there on Pyramid, actually, he goes, you know what? The first time I watched Gill, I couldn't sleep for a week after. He's not trying to do that to you, though. I can tell you this is your passion, man. You're passionate about this.
Well, when I first found this data, I was kind of like that gentleman there. I had quite a few sleepless nights because I only had part of the answer, and that started with the Asian astronomers records. I'll pull it up right here. This is it right here. Okay. Remember, I was a hardened skeptic because no one would show evidence. They couldn't. They were just these wild claims that didn't work for me. But when I found these white paper reports right here, I could get you a clearer version of this. As far as the hypothesis is the year, like I said, I give estimates on a year because the Bible does not come out and say it's going to happen on this year. It alludes to certain things. One of them is the story of Jacob, 20 years. And we will see troops in the street to be able to hold order, but it won't be because of the planet. They have to cause some other incident, maybe terrorism or whatever. But whenever you start to see troops in the streets, and probably the part of the internet will go down, probably YouTube or any of these news feed that are not controlled, will go down for, let's say, they're spreading propaganda, they'll say, or something like that. Remember, martial law, you can't say anything that's going to panic the public. So even if there would be a planet, if someone says, look, there it is, they can arrest them. So it's left up to you to know where to look, and I show you where to look. I show you what to get, and be patient, because astronomy requires patience. If you want to read about what changed my mind was this right here. This first white paper report. And this is from the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies. There's a second one which you can get off the internet, which is this one right here, which is free. You can get this one here. You have to pay I believe it's like $38, $29 right here, but I think it's higher now. This one is free. This one came first, before this one. This one actually shows the Chinese writings. I like it. Because if you're hiding something, many people will not show the evidence, actual pictures of the evidence. Like when I show you something, I'm showing you the software, I show you the artifact, and I show you the biblical writings and how they correlate, all three. Now, make up your own mind. You can read it yourself. So this is something that if you want to see, that's hard information. This is a tapestry right here that shows it in the top corner right here. It shows the fiery dragon of old, and this looks like a meteor shower behind it. That's right here by Harold, King Harold of England, 1054. This was the orbit. This is the capital cities at the time of the astronomers' sightings. They were in these capital cities. And the data shows us all of these points right here. I even have some of the European sightings, but they're not as detailed and accurate. From the European sightings, I cannot establish an orbit. I can establish the date that they saw it and where it would have been on the orbit of the Asian astronomers. But the only ones who are accurate enough to do it is the Asian astronomers. They had gave enough, along with right here between inch. You see this green circle? That is Earth right here. Earth's orbit is this green circle. I have these gray lines where Earth sighted. Earth was, okay, let's take a look at this first one right here. January 31st, okay? J is for January, 31st is the last day. Earth was right here when it sighted it over here, okay? All the way to February 28th. February 28th, right here. All the way up to February 28th, right here. Now, a lot of people said that was the supernova, the Crab Nebula explosion. That happened a couple of weeks earlier. This object, as you can clearly see, is not in the constellation of the Crab Nebula. And this is seen through multiple constellations. Crab Nebula is this exploding star doesn't move. It expands, but it stays in the same spot. The center of it stays in the same area. It's always will be in the same constellation with the same coordinates. It doesn't move. So how can this be a Crab Nebula when you see all the orbs, all of these gray lines is the date showing where Earth was at the time of the sighting. It's impossible. This was seen for 26 months. 13 months coming in, 13 months leaving. This is the, let's see, this is the 13 months right here, and I think this is the 13 month right in here. Constantinople saw it here. Chinese saw it right here. So that was 13 months in 13 months. That's total 26 months. Naked eye observation. They didn't have a telescope yet. Now, will we see it for 13? We might, but the Bible alludes that we have short notice. So it may be shorter than that. Definitely by June or July, on whatever year that it may be, I'm shooting. I'm very curious whether or not it's going to arrive this next year. Because remember, March of 2021 is the arrival, but you back that up 13 months. Well, that puts you at the end of February of 2020 to start looking for it. And I think maybe by June or July, I think the whole world would be able to see it then. But this is what turned me around. And after that, I started losing sleep until I said, okay, when is it coming back? Does it have a track record? Well, first I said, I didn't like what I found. And I said, let me find the Achilles heel so I can disprove it. Find, if it doesn't have a set pattern, where did it show up again in the past? I mean, like this might not be returned to 3,000 or 4,000 years later. Okay, so if I would have had that knowledge, then that would, okay, we got nothing to worry about. but that's not what I found. It was about every 360 years or so. Is it where they had a couple shorter turns because it ran into something and it made a shorter orbit. But its normal orbit without hitting anything is roughly around 360 years. Not the 3,600 years. They got too many zeros on that number. The data is too prevalent, which I can show you right here. It's just too prevalent on how many times it came around. These are all of the documented from Noah's flood to Yeshua, all the way. The information gets sketchy in modern time because in Europe, where most of our data was coming from, they did censorship. And that's not me saying that. That's what the scientists did, because they were still looking for the supernova at the time. And they said the data is strangely missing in the records over there. Like they said, like it was censored. And I would agree with that. But I wasn't the first to say it. The scientists were. And remember how the Bible says that earthquakes would rise like the pains of a woman giving birth? Well, we definitely see that. I can show you more recent.
This year, when they shut down the Sun Observatory in New Mexico, do you think it was because of Nibiru, or they saw something that they didn't want to alarm the public?
No, I think that was a they were bouncing something off of communication satellite. It was
communication.
It had a secondary use to spy, and that's why it was shut down. It had really, they were using it under the disguise of astronomy, but it was a source of leaking information right there. They could transmit. So that's why it was shut down. This was in 2017. This is from a friend of mine. He has his own seismic equipment, and you can see where it's an exponential rise. And if you have any other questions, I can answer them.
Great. Let's do some questions now, Gill, because we've got questions. I appreciate that. So that's good data right there. This question is from Tallahassee. What event would cause a mist to come up from the ground?
Well, I mean, depends, the ground depends on where. If it's in a city, like from a sewer line, that can be just a change in temperature with seasons. The worst case scenario would be lava going into your sewer and drain lines. If it's away from a city in the middle of the woods, then that's usually a fault that hit some sort of water, or water's leaking on the lava or something like that. But that's about the only situations that I know. Or it could
Gill,
be an underground cave. If you have a cave that's not known, they have vents. And especially when you get severe changes, like sudden changes in temperature, then the ground doesn't have time either to equalize, and then you get a steam type effect.
Thank you for that. And the next question is from Jennifer. Man, we got some great questions in here. We've got almost 1,200 people in the live chat right now, so it's hopping in here, Gill. They love you. And folks, let's send good energy towards Gill. All right, this question is where to go. Jennifer says, any info on the Tartaria civilization or mud floods? I know nothing about that.
I don't know anything about that either.
Okay, great. We got that out of the way quick. And Save or Slave says, what is Gill's take on micronovas? Your thoughts?
Not pertinent to this particular subject. So I really don't have any comment. I'm an amateur astronomer. I'm not the PhD version.
Great. Perfect. And the PhD versions usually just have more student debt anyway. The next question is, Pyramid says, so how much time is left, Gill?
That's the That's the $100 million question right there. If I knew the exact, I wouldn't be giving estimates. I would give you an exact day. Estimates is the best educated guess with the data at hand. You go on, the way the Bible is telling you to do this is you have to be your own watchman on the wall, or like a community, you know, like a church group. Someone who has some form of knowledge of astronomy. You get one of these planispheres here, okay? You get a planisphere for your latitude. Where I'm at and where, let me see, Jerusalem is at is 30-40 degree latitude. This is the north side. You see north right here. You flip it over to the back side, it says south. You rotate this to the date and then to the hour, and it'll tell you exactly the constellation that's in front of you. Don't depend on software, because your internet might be down and then your software might not work. This is all old school way of doing it. And then what you look for is you look for Capricorn and Sagittarius, and it's going to have to be on the ecliptic. Can't be any place else. For you to have 2 meteor showers 5 months apart, and the other point is the pivot point of the center of the sun, you got 3 fixed points. If you know anything about trigonometry and stuff, that means it can't move. It has to be on this green line, which is called the ecliptic. That's Earth planetary plane projected out throughout, right across the skies. And the reason why it's raised up like this is because Earth is tilted, 23.5 degrees tilt. So this is where you look. You look in between Capricorn and Sagittarius. There's a constellation right over here somewhere. It's called Delphinius in modern term. The old term is Job's coffin. The word coffin in Hebrew meant confined area or defining area, because this is the shape of this little constellation is like a fist with a finger pointing. And that finger points right smack dab in the middle, right in here. Now remember Job, Job went through this event, and he lost his family. So there's two. A lot of people say the Bible doesn't have any scientific information that it's stories. No, these are eyewitness accounts, because there's no way that they can correlate the data without witnessing an actual event. The model dictates, it doesn't guess, it dictates the series, what sequence of items are going to happen to you, okay? And when you go back, they have the exact same sequence. And that's what science is in astronomy. You take observed phenomena, bring it into the laboratory like software, show that it's repeatable, that's science. Well, we have multiple events in the Bible that I can prove is scientifically correct. And there's no way ancient man can do that by guessing. Let me show you. This is, I was trying to figure out the odds. I'm not very good at there's certain things you really can't figure. But this is the events in the Bible, and this is after the Bible, after Yeshua's sacrifice. This is secular. And I listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 qualifiers that went across all of these objects. Like, does it match the 6,000 year timeline here, you know, of certain events? Yes, it does. Ancient artifacts, only a few have ancient artifacts. Does it match the patriarchs' ages? Okay. On certain ones, it does. Does it match the astronomy star mapping software? Yes. Does it match orbital mechanics, like Kepler's laws of planetary? Yes. Historical descriptions? Yes. There's even outside historical, not just not just the Bible. And then is it prophesied? Certain events were prophesied before they even occurred. So some of these have all 7. Now look at the odds. For it to come within a 2-hour event, you're looking at 1 in 313,000. Now, once you get to the 3rd event, it's no longer an accident. Your odds of probability say you can't, it's beyond what an accident would, it has to be real after that point, after you get past 3. How many of these are past 3? Some of these are all 7. Now, keep in mind, to figure out the entire odds, you got to take this number, multiply it times this, times that, times this next one, this one. I don't know what the odds would be for this one or prophesizing. I have no way of calculating odds on that. But you're supposed to multiply these on how many dots are landed. That tells you the total odds per event. So the only one that we only have 2 is over here, where censorship was happening. This is the only thing we have right here is a carved wooden object that shows the event. This one we have 3 right here. That's the medieval. But between here is where censorship was happening in Europe. This is 1054. Have all of them except it wasn't prophesied in the Bible. So it doesn't fit any of these. See, anything secular doesn't fit prophecy. But look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events. And for Yeshua, the only thing I'm missing is an artifact, and I'm still looking. If I can find an artifact, which I know somewhere out there it exists, then I'll be able to highlight all 7 of these. But think of the odds. Can this be an accident? Impossible. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Do you think that the Hollow Earth or Agaratha is a real place?
I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen a picture of it, and I haven't any data to confirm it. I've heard speculations, and speculations really doesn't, anybody can say, yes, it's real. And anybody can say, no, it's not. There's nothing to prove it either way. You know.
So you're saying there's a chance. All right.
Well, you can't.
I'm joking.
Yeah, you can't, because there's lack of evidence. You can't say it doesn't exist. That's something that's impossible. That would be, you know. But I don't see how it would. You know, if you're asking me, I don't see how that would. But I'm open-minded. If you can show me evidence of something, then I'll change. I'll change my mind.
You follow the evidence, not your ego, is what you're telling me.
Like I said, I was a hardened skeptic when I first came across this whole subject, until I found my own hard evidence and backtracked it and ran the models. After about 1.5 years of adding more and more evidence, because I was looking for the Achilles heel to kill it, and the only thing I found was additional evidence to prove it, I had no longer a footing to stand as a skeptic. Now that means it's real. When you have a pile of evidence, that means the object's real. Because if it can't stand the heat, then it's not real. You know, if you can't stand critical thinking, or the math doesn't work, or the science, look, remember, the science works now because we have new science, the plasma, I mean, the physicists come up with a brand new model that's been proven out in nature. I'll show you one. The physicists and astronomers made a bet basically at NASA. The physicists said that when Comet Springs were going to pass near Mars, that there would be an electrical discharge between the two bodies. And astronomers said no, it wouldn't, because the tail of a comet is ice particles, and the physicists are saying the tail of a comet is plasma, electrically charged. So they had a open bet, and this was they had it where the people could see it on the public TV. They had cameras pointed at Mars. So this is the video here. Watch. This is just a animation. Okay, this is Mars in the center right here. And he's talking about it. Let's see here. This is the area that this amateur astronomer, a doctor from Spain, might have been Portugal, he set up and he filmed this right here. This is the comet right here. This is Mars. Watch how Mars is going to light up when the tail passes. That's a plasma strike. That proves that the tail of a comet is not ice particles, and that astronomers are wrong on that.
Let me say something on that.
Huh? What's that?
That makes me think of that petroglyph panel that I showed you. The planet, the lightning bolt, the stick, the plasma stick figure, dude. That's awesome, man. That was amazing. That was video footage right there that shows, like you said.
Now, NASA pulled away and didn't show the public. Because remember, there was a 10-second delay on the feed to the on the feed to the public. All right. So they didn't want to show you that. It proves that, and you need to know this because the astronomers were wrong. Whenever this planet, if it's a couple, maybe 2 to 3 times larger than Earth, because I think now it's mostly metallic, you're going to have these 30-mile wide lightning bolts. How do we know it's 30 miles? Because we have a crater that was formed by one of these in the Sahara. That's this one right here. This is the eye of the Sahara. Let's see, right here. You can go look it up on Google Map. This is 30 miles across. Reason why this is not a meteor crater, because it's not concave, it's flat. And they have multiple rings, because that's what a spinning lightning bolt does. It's like a tornado. It has a helical coil, and it cuts, and it dissolves 300 foot of a mountain side here somewhere around in here. Let me show you the... So this is where it's located right here in Africa. This is the side view. You can see how flat it is. 30 miles across. This is not the only one on Earth, but this is the most significant one. That's the perfect size. This has happened from my point of view. This happened around the time of Hezekiah, when Earth tilted and the calendar changed and everything. This is around the same time as Zeus in the ancient, I forgot, I think it was the Greeks, was Zeus. They said how Zeus threw lightning bolts and melted mountains. Well, there is a mountain range on one of these sides right here. 300 foot of it is vaporized. So this is going to happen again, because this next event is going to come very close to Earth. Earth is going to tilt 23. Earth is going to stop on this axis like Joshua's long day. This is what happened to Joshua. A tail of a comet has basically 3 tails, if you want to call it that. This tail, the blue right here, is the plasma. This gold is nano dust. Very, very fine dust, because plasma, when it hits something, it turns into nanoparticles, okay? And you see this blue is this orbit, but that's also where the debris, the meteors, are following it. The meteors stay on this blue orbit. But the tail will always point opposite of the sun. Keep that in mind. That the particles are right in between the two, always in the middle. So let's go forward with this. I'm going to show you a model pertaining to this next event. This, you see this red line right here? That's our planet X's orbit right here. It's going outward. This is the time of March. This is Earth orbit. You see this green, a green line. Now, this is the moon's orbit around Earth. And now Earth This is 3 days before the meteor strike. This is where Earth is entering into the plasma tail. Remember, a tail of a comet is not ice particles. And each day is getting deeper and deeper into the plasma, and we're losing the rotation speed of 4.5 to 5.5% compounded hourly. Within 3 days, Earth comes to a complete stop, and our orbital rotation is delayed by 12 hours. This is what remember, this is the model shows us. This is how Joshua's long day actually happened. And you can see right here. Now, right here is where Earth is entering into the debris that's behind the. Remember, Earth has tilted within the last 12 hours of its approach here. It tilts. Now, I want to give you Earth's forward speed will slow down. That's why it's impossible for the two planets to collide in March. There's a mechanism that God has created within this that the plasma eliminates any collision in the month of March. Now, if you use straight calculations without compensating for the Earth slowing down, you will calculate the Earth is going to collide with it, and men's heart will fail for what they anticipate. But if you don't understand the science and what's behind this thing, Earth's forward speed and its rotation will slow down by 12 hours. It will miss us because of the built-in mechanism of a plasma tail of a comet will slow the orbital speed. Now, it could collide 5 months later if it was coming in, but that's not the way the timing is set. Because that's how Ceres got destroyed. When it was coming in, Ceres passed in front of it and had a head-on collision. Ceres is now the asteroid belt. That happened just before the Exodus. And that's why they had 3 days of darkness instead of 3 hours of darkness like Yeshua on the cross. Yeah, he only had 3 hours of darkness because it was going its normal rate. Remember, it was Passover. The moon is on the wrong side of Earth for Yeshua's sacrifice. There was a 3-hour eclipse during Yeshua's sacrifice. This was Passover. That's a full moon. The moon's on the opposite side of the sun. So how can you have an eclipse when the moon usually gives you an eclipse of the sun? That's a new moon on this side. But Passover is on a full moon. Moon's on the opposite side. And we have outside text, it's not in the Bible, but outside text of a discussion that the moon was blood red and the sun went dark. That was a double eclipse. When you read the text of the Bible, you find multiple double eclipses. Yes, that's plural on eclipse. Normally, an eclipse is not plural, but on this case, it is. You cannot have a double eclipse in the natural unless there's a third body, like a planet-sized object. The Bible tells you the whole earth went dark. Yes, it did. The moon can only give you 7.3 minutes of darkness because Earth will rotate out of the shadow because it only gives you a small period of light. It doesn't give you a full total Earth darkness. It gives you like this right here. It gives you a path, and Earth will rotate out that path in 7.3 minutes. So how do you get 3 hours? Because the moon was on the back side of Earth for Passover, and it was a bigger object, therefore darkening the whole planet. And this was exactly the same spot as Abraham went to do a dry rehearsal of a father killing his son right here on top of the mountain, Abraham and Isaac. Remember, the lamb had his head, his horns were caught in thorns right here. This was the exact spot. Here's the lamb, here's the crown of thorns. There was the exact spot. Here's this wasn't even shown at the time because all of this rock right here was quarried to make the wall of Jerusalem. So the exact spot where Yeshua was right over, Abraham was doing this right on top of the spot. This is not an accident. You can't have that type of timing. And the lamb's blood went onto the ark that's hidden in a cave underneath there, anointing the Ark of the Covenant. That fulfilled the practice run that they were practicing for thousands of years. Because there was no Ark of the Covenant in the second temple. It was in the first temple. And when it went, before it was destroyed, they hid it in a cave that Solomon had built for it. Right here, where God told him to put it. And his blood anointed the ark. And this had to come, remember, at the exact hour that he was on the cross for 3 hours of darkness. Did Yeshua ever say to Rome, hey, I'm kind of set for time. Make sure you crucify me make sure I'm on the cross between 12 and 3 because there's going to be this eclipse that you don't know anything about. That's going to give 3 hours of darkness. I need to be up there. Did he say that? He didn't answer his accusers. Didn't tell him anything. The timing is right up to an hour, to the minute, as it will be on the last event coming up here in Revelation. There's no such word in Hebrew as accident because the Almighty controls everything. He gets it to the exact time. If you follow his dry rehearsals, his rehearsal patterns, he's telling you to be in Jerusalem. Why? You may ask. Let me show you. All of this your audience can get for free. It's a PDF. All the graphics are there. And therefore they can...
Is that on your website if they go to planet7x.net, Gill?
Yep, planet7x.net. You go down towards the middle. You're going to see a Google Drive link. That would take you to a place where you can get the book for free. You see here...
Man, that's really cool. That is so cool that you're doing that for people.
Well, this is a life or death issue. This is not... I don't... Look, the videos you see, I don't make a profit on that. I was very helpful and thankful that a producer was willing to make them. Okay, but that's his line of work. That's his way he makes a living and everything. He has the equipment and he's able to charge because the Bible says that. Okay, a man is worth his hours. Okay, I do all of this for free. I do the graphics. I did the studies, and it's something. If if someone else would have did the research and I didn't know the subject, I would wish that they would give it to me because I couldn't afford it. Okay. So now, for the ones who think the earth is flat, I can't help you because this model is not going to work. On a globe earth, you have half the earth that is safe. Only half the earth is going to be hit by a meteor shower when you go through a debris field. That's why he tells you to be that he will arrive mid of night. Midnight, right here. It's not exactly midnight. It's mid of that night. That night is going to be 24 hours, not 12. So when you get mid of 24, if you're still looking at your watch, it's 6 in the morning, but it's not really. It's going to be mid of the night because you still got another 12 hours of darkness before Earth is going to gain back its rotational spin. So you have to remember there's a one of the prophets said in the end days, he'll make day into night and night into day. Well, that's not an eclipse. An eclipse does not give you light in the nighttime. That is a 12-hour delay. If you know the science and you're looking at this correctly, you can see what he's talking about. 1/3 of the grass, 1/3 of the trees, and 1/3 of the rivers. When you said fresh water, you just described continental crust. You didn't say oceans. This half of the earth right here is 1/3 of continental crust. This half is 2/3. You got Africa, Europe, and Asia. That is 2/3 of the continental crust. But the Bible clearly says 1/3 of the continental crust. Remember, the astronomers who have it wrong is going to predict because they're not calculating a 12-hour delay in the Earth's rotation, because this is the false miracle of the Antichrist. Change times and laws. The Antichrist is over here in the Middle East, after the astronomers say that half of the Earth is going to be hit. Because of CO4, because of the terrorist activities, they can't get a visa to leave their country because of the terrorist activities. They're locked in their own country. No one will give them a visa. So they're fearing for their life. And here comes this so-called Mahdi with a false miracle saying, I will change times and laws, and I'll cause fire to fall on our enemies. Because there's going to be a 12-hour delay in Earth's rotation, like the story of Joshua's long. That's the only data we have to prove this, is Joshua's long day. And the model with the physicists, new information, now this thing works. Without this, you would consider a lot of people will fly to the United States thinking that it's safe, because the astronomers are claiming this side is, I'm telling you, way ahead, before they even, I'm giving you that's going to be 3.5 days after Passover. They're going to give a 40-day warning to the public, just like Jonah did. And they're going to predict the wrong half of the earth. Now, do you believe the Bible enough to put your life on it? Because this is what it's telling you to do. It says, be in Jerusalem for Sukkot. From Sukkot, you stay there till Passover. In the Bible, it says, don't make your trip in the winter. Well, I got a problem with that. Reading it in Hebrew, because these are Hebrew authors, they didn't have 4 seasons. That came from Babylon into the Greeks and the Roman period. They had 2 seasons. They had the cold and the warm. And it was determined by the equinox, which this is how the first of the year of the Hebrew is right next to, it's within a week or two of equinox, the year, which is the mid of March. Well, 6 months earlier than that, in other words, it's saying don't make your trip in the last 6 months, not last 3 months. Well, that brings it to Sukkot. Don't make your trip after Sukkot, because it's going to be almost impossible. The Jews will regulate who will come into their land. Unless you're following it says, Yahovah, he says, these are my feasts. These are not feasts of the Jews. He says, these are my feasts, and you will follow them forever. Ever does not mean 2,000 years. Show me that in a dictionary. It says you will follow it forever. And these are not feasts. They're rehearsal patterns. It gets you prepared to be in the right place with the right equipment for the right event. Spiritually, mentally, and physically. Because if you're lacking one of those 3 prepared, you have a hard time making it. Because this is going to, remember, the Bible says this is going to be the worst event in all of Earth's history. Noah's flood is not the worst. This next one is. And in each story in the Bible gives you the data point to figure out the last book of the Bible. Man cannot do that. Cannot make up those stories and give you a conclusion where it involves all of the past events into one book. It's impossible.
This has been just wow. The amount of information is phenomenal. And I mean, with all the slides that you have, we could probably go another 4 hours here. We're not going to, folks. I'm going to have to let Gill go and for now, and hopefully we could get the opportunity to get you back on the program. But I just want to say again, you need to go to planet7x.net, planet7x.net, and not only download the materials, but also get that video, get that DVD. Now, I don't know if you're offering it in MP4 format also, or is he sending it out in strictly DVDs?
I think it's strictly DVDs. I'm going to talk to him and see if he might. I think by Thanksgiving, I'm going to talk him into releasing at least one of the DVDs where I walk through every slide. I'm gonna hope that he posts it on YouTube for people to look. I go through every slide and I discuss the story of the Bible with the scientific evidence and how it matches the model and what it's describing there. So remember when the Israelites were leaving Egypt, when it got to the Red Sea, it says he used the wind to part the waters, and they walked on dry land. He didn't tell them to walk on water right there like he could have. He could have. He wanted to create another miracle, walk on water. He has a reason for what he does the way that he does it. Remember when Noah hit the rock twice instead of once? Because there was a reason for that. That's why he punished him. He says, listen to me exactly what I said. Don't add or take away from what I'm saying. If the Almighty wants to use this planet like he decided to use the wind to separate the water, that's his way of doing it. Don't put the Almighty in a box. He created the stars for our timing. That's his calendar. The constellations. He created the water, the wind, and planets as well. Because if you go look up, some people think there was a misspelling where it says when there's a sign in the heaven. Oh, I think I'm messing it up. But it's instead of saying S-O-N, it says S-U-N in the text. Well, remember the Greek word for sun would have been helios. Helios does not mean what we think it means. It means illuminated object is what the word literally means. Okay, so it can be the sun, but it can also be a comet. Because names, they didn't have names like today. Today a name doesn't have a meaning. That's not the way it was in the past. A name had a meaning. And that's what that helios meant, illuminated object. So they could apply that to any other illuminated object because they know what they're talking about when they point to it, okay? So their vocabulary is only like a quarter, maybe at the most 3/8 of an inch thick if you take a dictionary. Today, the English vocabulary would be over 5 foot tall if you stacked all of the dictionaries together of every word we have, over 5 foot tall. So you have to understand ancient languages on what they're saying and the way they're saying it. It has a rhyme and reason. The moon has to be at the foot of Virgo. It says the woman is illuminated. It's the tail. This is how the model shows it. The tail illuminates Virgo only. The sun illuminates all of the constellations. And if you read what they're telling you, like a zodiac, the zodiac is the occult. The sign that they're talking about is behind the sun, and you can't see it. That's how the occult shows it. The Mezarah, the Hebrew way of looking at it, is at the nighttime skies. That means they're 6 months out of sync to be able to see Virgo. One is if you use the occult version, you're looking at September. If you use the Mezarah, which is nighttime skies, where only Virgo is illuminated, okay, and anybody and everybody can see it, then you're looking at March. And this is exactly what it's telling you. You have to separate between wrong teaching, like the occult version, which is the zodiac, which it says you're not supposed to use that, versus the Mezarah, which is the Hebrew way of looking at the nighttime skies. So this is what's meant by Virgo, the woman, is being illuminated. Only Virgo is being illuminated with the moon at her feet. The tail of this comet points opposite of the sun, and this is what you will physically see if you're in Jerusalem. You'll only be able to see this from Jerusalem at that time, mid of night, when the Messiah is coming, mid of night. The two witnesses would show up 3.5 days earlier for Passover. You have a meal with them. It's going to be a private meeting because Earth is entering the tail then. That means all generators globally will have to be turned off. So there's no TV crews or radio crews announcing the two witnesses have arrived in the private meeting for 3.5 days. Till the last 3.5 days is when, on the last day, mid of night, from Jerusalem, after a 12-hour delay in Earth's rotation, this is what you see in the sky. I don't mind skeptics. I really don't, because I know what they're looking for, because I was a skeptic, and I can show them if they take time to go read the actual white paper report. And right. I've taken on those trolls as well, because I said, point out something. Once you tell them, point out where I'm wrong, and then when they do, I show them the evidence. I said, okay, you want to try again? And they'll, after about 5 or 6 times, they give up because they'll go on some other place. I said, show me where it's wrong. Show me the math, show me the model, show me something where I'm not showing this correct. I show you the data. I show you the software model. I'll show you the coordinates if you want it. All of this stuff. Because if you have something to hide, you're not going to show all that. And I don't have anything to hide because I want people to learn this.
I love what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing, and wish you the very best. And before we close, also, I just want to say, folks, be amazing to one another. Do your research. Don't be avoid being a regurgitator. Be a researcher. And then if we work together, if we can have an open mind, yet not so open that your brain falls out on the sidewalk, because you don't want to have because really you've got to have some foundation there. But that data, man, that you were shown with the chart and the numbers and the timelines and the years, that's something that in order for, I'm going to have to spend, each slide that you presented, Gill, I could do an entire podcast on, where I could link those dates and I could say, okay, this is from 1047 in China. Well, what's it like over here in the Persian Gulf, or what's it like over here in the States? And so, just so much great information, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Rex, you're welcome to use any of my slides as long as you don't sell it. As long as you don't sell stuff, it's open to the public. So if you want to use that as an educational tool, that's what it's there for anybody out there, as an educational tool. It's not for people to put in their books and sell it commercial. You're breaking, because as long as I made it, I have a copyright, whether it's written on there or not. There's a copyright law that you can use it for your personal use. And if you want to use it educational, it's fine, but don't go commercial with it. Help people with it. As the Bible says, what's given unto you, you give to others. Doesn't mean you turn around and you charge for it. You're breaking his laws.
But right. And also, like you said, though, your friend that helped you with the videos, that he's putting a ton of time.
That's his living, and that's fine. And he's giving it to it costs him money, and he's able to do that because people wanted the video. You can still go see my videos on YouTube where I talk about the same information for free. But people wanted to review it, and they can buy it. It's there. But if you go to some of my older videos, they're like 3 hours long. Some of them I go from beginning to end multiple times. So,
and absolutely. And it's funny because sometimes people will give me a hard time. They'll be like, Rex, man, you're promoting a product. How dare you? Well, come on, man. I'm doing this 12, 16 hours a day. I'm spending thousands of dollars of my own money to do my own research and share it with you. This one guy left a comment. This was just funny. I get a kick out of it. I think it's funny because I get it. There's enough people out there that help League Project and Sport League Project, and combined with as much videos as I do, that I don't need to worry about somebody like that at all. I think it's funny. This one guy said, Rex, I've been watching you for years, man. And you've got a website that you charge $10 a month for exclusive content. And he started going, LOL, LOL, LOL. I can't believe it, man. I wouldn't pay to watch you. And I thought to myself, wow, buddy, you've been watching me for years. You said in your comment, and my videos aren't worth anything to you. So what is your time worth? If you're putting time, if your wife been watching my videos for years and you don't think it's worth anything, what's that saying about your time? Anyway, But hey, I love doing videos for free. I love it. I love it. And I love having great sponsors, and I love having people share the comments, and I love the opportunity to have a commercial in there or so. So it all works out. It's all amazing. And you're all wonderful people. I love all of you. Even the guy that left that comment that said he wouldn't pay a dime for my podcast. Hey, I get it, man. It's all good. I love you too. Gill, you're a legend, man.
Well, we can do this anytime in the future. If your listeners will send you questions, if I don't have an answer, I don't make one up. You just like earlier today. What about that mud, whatever it said, mud
fossils,
whatever it was,
or mud floods?
Yeah, I have no data on that. I can't make a comment even on it. So
that's what I'm talking about.
We've had many disasters in the past, many, that wiped out certain civilizations. And it's mostly because of the tidal wave. They lived along the coastline. Most of the civilizations did. And the Bible says during this next time, don't live anywhere along the coastline. Globally, don't live along the coastline. It's going to be a hazardous situation. Yeah. But thank you, Rex. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell, and be the change you want to see.